So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining the latest Wellingtone community event. It must be that time of year. We're nearing Christmas because we're talking about PMO trends and what's going to dominate the conversation in 2026. Today we're going to explore how 2025 was for the PMO. We're going to identify some of the lessons from the last year, uncover what's coming in 2026 and learn how to get future PMO ready. So let's have a look at 2025. A few different things have happened, and you can see from the sources they come from lots of different sources. So really looking first of all from a PMO perspective at business acumen. This is something that we talk about in our project management and PMO courses quite a lot. And business acumen, a little bit like last year, we talked about the importance of what we would historically have called soft skills being called power skills. So more the people side of change, and now we're seeing this growth in terms of the importance of having business acumen and being able to navigate our political landscape within the organisation. And this quote from the PMI, business acumen transforms project professionals from tactical troubleshooters into strategic partners, is a really important quote because that's what we want. We want the PMOs to be strategic partners of the organisation. We also saw some work from ProSci around the sponsor and the effectiveness of sponsor when it comes to meeting our project objectives. And again, we've been talking about this for a little while. Our fastest growing course at the moment is our Sponsoring Successful Projects course. And we know that the National Audit Office say that the biggest predictor of project success is down to the effectiveness of your sponsor. And ProSci, or professional sciences as you might know them, have kind of doubled down on that and really shown that if we have good quality sponsors who are not just capable and educated but also available and present, will make a really big difference to the outcomes of our projects. And within that ProSci report, they also talked about some of the biggest change management obstacles. So we know that change management is super important and it has to happen in order for things to be embedded. And they've kind of really started to identify what people are saying are their biggest challenges. The top one being insufficient stakeholder engagement and management. So again, really kind of honing in on the importance of the humans in the process. Lack of leadership, buy-in and support, which really correlates with what they found in terms of the sponsor effectiveness. Organisational culture being misaligned to what we're actually trying to achieve, as well as resistance to change. All of those things kind of can be really helped with better communication, better engagement, and having a PMO that's really central to having some of these conversations. Also, a lack of education and awareness of change management. So making sure that we have either change managers who are educated and qualified, or if the PMO has to pick up some of that change management activity, which if you are curious about, you can go back and view one of our previous webinars, which was about the PMO as a facilitator, where change management was a part of that, where we're seeing organisations who don't have change managers and the PMO is taking on board some of those responsibilities. And we need to ensure that if that's our reality, that the PMO is also educated. In terms of other things that they found down at the bottom are the project management challenges themselves and the age-old limited resources excuse me, and time constraints that we have across all businesses and all sectors, and I would say probably the global industry. So two really interesting bits from ProSci there around the sponsor effectiveness and the change management obstacles that people are experiencing. And then if we turn our attention to the Wellingtone State of Project Management report, so we know that after speaking to and having PMO professionals talk to us about their PMO, the belief is that the scope and responsibilities of the PMO is going to get bigger over the next 12 months. So we've seen kind of very few people saying, I think my PMO is going to get smaller. The largest percentage of 72% is that our PMO scope and responsibilities are going to get bigger. So we're going to get busier, we're going to have more things that we need to add to our service catalogue, and we're going to be supporting people in different ways. And then when we continue with our State of Project Management report, looking at what activities are undertaken by the PMO. And we've seen some of the more common ones that we see year in, year out. So project status reporting, maintaining that portfolio list, maintaining and managing the methodology and the templates, facilitating approval process and project assurance. But some of the things that are starting to shift around and kind of come up and bubbling up to the surface are things like providing expertise, facilitating lessons learned, facilitating gate reviews, doing actual resource management. And the one at the bottom, although it's still at the bottom in terms of benefits tracking, we've seen a greater percentage of PMOs, so the numbers actually shifted forward. Again, thinking about the PMO as a facilitator, where just like change management, they're not the benefit owners, but they support and enable and facilitate the tracking of benefits. And that's where we start to see real traction with our benefits realization. So what did we learn over the last year? First of all, the rise of the accidental project manager. So one of the things that we also saw in our state of project management in the last year is the rise of poorly trained project managers being towards, if not at the top of challenges that organizations are dealing with. And the reason for that is not that project managers aren't going out and getting qualified, is that more organizations are utilizing accidental project managers. So these are subject matter experts who find themselves doing project by accident. So there'll be a piece of work that they get given, and they find themselves doing project management without much support or training. So again, I mentioned earlier our fastest growing course being the Sponsoring Successful Projects, and this one is a close second, the Everyday Project Management, which is designed to give these accidental project managers a little bit of support in terms of the basics of the functionality of projects, why we use projects, why we use a framework, what the key aspects are that they need to consider, but also how to build that into their day job, because accidental project managers, as I mentioned, are SMEs and quite often have another job. Project management isn't just what they do. We see that knowledge management is dominating a lot of the conversation. So we talk more about lessons identified and knowledge management. So what can we do with the knowledge that comes from our projects? So rather than just talking and focusing in on the lessons learned, because let's face it, we're really good at identifying lessons, not so good at learning from them, is kind of elevating that conversation to talk about wider knowledge management. Emerging professionals are engaging with the industry. So we've seen a real rise of young professionals, new professionals who maybe have had a career change, really kind of engaging with the industry. So we've seen some emerging professionals coming to our conference, Future PMO, and really engaging with the industry to learn more about networking and about the project management practice in different organizations. So I think younger people in the industry, as opposed to younger in age, are learning the value of building a network and putting themselves out there, which I think is really positive. And with that, kind of coupled with that, is around the fact that community matters. As we continue to work in this hybrid way, the ability to bring people together is actually really important. And we've also seen that hybrid working is taking hold. So lots of organisations that I speak to kind of really struggle to get people to come to the office now more than maybe once or twice a week. So we really need to make sure that our PMOs are able to adapt our governance, our frameworks, our templates and our style to work more in this hybrid way as we continue to make this the norm more than ever before. PMO metrics, we still struggle with this concept that we need to start measuring our own performance. Just like we ask the project managers to measure the performance of their projects, PMOs still need to get better at talking about what they're good at and what they're not good at and where we have a bit of a journey. So that's something that we do talk a lot about in our PMO pathway courses in terms of the tactics that we can use to be able to articulate the value through metrics that people will recognize and that people will understand when we say, you know, this is how this service is performing right now. So that's something that I think we still haven't quite got to grips with across the board. Sponsors, although they are now being educated, they still continue to need support. So we see quite a lot of sponsors coming through our Dr. PMO clinic and just chatting things through about how to set up their teams, how to manage the relationship with their project managers. So if you are working with a sponsor who's maybe you feel is struggling or is not present, it's really important that we manage up in that way to give them the support that they need, and don't assume that just because they're a senior person that they magically know how to sponsor. And then lastly, objectives and key results. are really starting to help benefits realization management. So benefits being the single hardest thing for us to do. We know this, it's kind of a respected norm in our industry. It is the most difficult thing for us to do successfully. But the concept of breaking benefits down into objectives and key results is really helping. It's really starting to gain some traction, particularly in public sector organisations where there is more of a short-term view of what we need to be tracking from a benefits perspective. So have a look into OKRs, objectives and key results, and I'm sure the guys will share lots and lots of links with you after this webinar that you can find out more about. So let's talk about the trends that we've uncovered for 2025, the things that are going to really dominate the conversation. So first of all, assurance is becoming much more focused with mini reviews that are embedded and enabled into tool sets like the Wellingtone Accelerator Plus. So rather than it being about big audits that happen later, we're seeing lots more mini reviews that are embedded into the day-to-day. So making assurance maybe a little bit more digestible and a little bit more accessible as well in many ways. Number two, AI, artificial intelligence. We were always going to talk about this, but also that coupled with automation. So one of the things with PMOs and AI is that it's actually exposing low performance PMOs. Now that AI is becoming much more embedded, that's starting to reveal which of the PMOs are really adding value and which are just doing reporting and admin. So where we talk about, will AI take our jobs? No, but it will change the way that we do our jobs. So there's not going to be really any room for mediocrity when it comes to PMOs, looking at how we're building strategies and how we utilize AI moving forward. Because if the tool can tell us and we can't, it does highlight the gaps for the senior teams. So being really mindful of how and why we're using AI and automation processes, and what we then can use that time to spend more valuably. Data and decisions, so data-driven decision-making in PMOs. The emphasis on data-driven decision-making is growing across all business areas, so including project management, including operations and commercial, because it can greatly enhance performance and accountability. And one of the presentations at our conference in October was about data analytics and making decisions. So again, go back and have a look at those slides, and you'll see how this kind of information is helping us to improve outcomes in our projects. Next is proportionate governance. So PMOs are now forced to govern less but better. So people want less gates, less approvals, just enough governance, in line with what we at Wellingtone have been proposing for some time when we talk about minimum viable bureaucracy. What is the least amount of structure that we can get away with that avoids chaos but allows us to create a view that gives confidence to the senior leadership. And we're now starting to see real traction. I know lots of the PMOs that I work with, whereas 5 years ago, it was very much a build everything for me. Now, a lot of the conversation is how can we simplify? So don't be afraid to take stuff away as you are evolving your PMO practice and your frameworks. Moving on, the specialism. So we talked about this, although they were slightly different last year, and the rise of these specialisms that are moving into PMO, because we can see that we don't have the resource outside of the PMO. So rather than try to find accountability somewhere where it's not coming, we're seeing more and more PMOs get involved in facilitating these processes. And like I said, we do have that webinar that you can go back and have a look at, which is about the PMO as a facilitator. So notably for us, change management, I already talked about a little bit. It is really critical in today's fast-paced environment. So PMOs need to play a key role in ensuring the successful transition from the current state to the future state. The next one is resource management. So PMOs being almost the referee, I guess you could say, in difficult resource allocation conversations. So looking at priorities, this is not entirely new, but it's newer for the PMO to be involved and have to have those negotiation skills to really be able to do that. And then the other one is sustainability. So how we can explore how PMOs can lead sustainability initiatives within organizations. So incorporating more green practices into our processes and into our decision making. we all know that sustainability is increasingly important. It's an issue globally, and we can play a crucial role. We can't change the whole way the organization feels about sustainability, but there are small things that we can do. And again, you can go back and have a look at last year's session at Future PMO, which was about sustainability and the PMO and the things that we can do to really encourage a different decision-making process. Benefits management. So I've talked again a little bit in our lessons around objectives and key results. So there needs to be a more digestible way to begin and continue the benefits management conversation. And we are starting to see OKRs gaining some traction. So again, with the PMO facilitating that post-delivery, it's really starting to make a difference in the benefits conversations. So go and have a look at those. Humans and the PMO. At Wellingtone, we talk about #human first all the time. So building a culture of collaboration, of innovation, and really focusing on people, culture, and leadership. It's one of the things that, as I mentioned, the softer skills, which are now called power skills, so negotiating, influencing, communication skills, are all going to be really important. And we need to build those routinely into our practices. And then the last one to talk about is domain specificity. So kind of thinking about how do we centralize the different types of knowledge that we need. So we are seeing many more central PMOs, but with domain knowledge. So with contextual knowledge of what is actually going on in that particular business or even in that department. So think of it like a bit of a hub and spoke model, but rather than being project centric, it's more kind of central with still looking at coordination, standards and tools, but with domain knowledgeable PMOs, so that the technical aspects of the projects can also be supported in part by the PMO. So we're working with lots of clients who are starting to work more and more in this way, and it really helps to kind of move into this continuous improvement, but not just looking at the project management practice, but how the technical aspect of projects can also be impacted by what we are doing. And that really helps to align with the PMO with the complex environment, and particularly useful if we are struggling to gain traction with our PMO simply because we're not kind of subject matter experts. So in some organizations, this is actually a really important role that the PMOs are starting to take on again, as we see it anyway. In terms of how to get Future PMO ready, so read up on the topics that you can see here that we've looked at. As I said, the guys will share some additional links, other webinars, articles that might be of use to you. Don't be afraid to go away and have a look and really kind of do the research. You can also then connect with your peers and share experiences and ask for help. So do not underestimate the power of having a community that you can ask a question of. And also, have a look at internally within your own organization, not what you think you know, but what you actually know. So really start to get to grips with, how is my organization embracing or not AI? How are we a strategic business partner? Is there something we can do around the specialism? So try to understand what the need is in your organization so that you can start 2026 off with kind of a really good plan in mind. And review your current ways of working. So remember what I said about being simplifying, being a bit more pragmatic, or even adding more of the topics that we've discussed that are becoming more important in the world of PMO. We also need to embrace change and the new things that are coming. So don't be afraid of artificial intelligence or a new specialism. There's lots of stuff out there that's going to help you. For example, for AI, we did some webinars and some articles with Welsh Water here in the UK, who did effectively, they tested AI in the PMO context, and then they did the webinars to show us their findings. So there's lots of stuff out there that can help you to get started. So don't feel like, oh, it's all or nothing. There are ways to get started. There are things that you need to do, and some people have already done the homework for you. And then plan for the future. Without a roadmap, you won't know that you've achieved. You'll just keep going and going and going like the Duracell bunny, but you'll never know if you've been successful. So make sure that you have a plan, that you create a roadmap for a period of time. When I build roadmaps for PMOs, we only ever look out 15 to 18 months as a maximum. So make sure that you build a roadmap for yourself, so that you can then articulate how you've improved and where you've been successful. We thought it would just be a fun thing to do, is to see kind of what's on everybody's Santa's wish list from a PMO perspective. So thank you so much for joining and taking part. I'm going to try and go to the next slide. There we go. Next slide. Here we go. So we always look at like who's the furthest away. So we've got a couple of people from Azerbaijan, Australia. There we go. Australia is definitely the furthest, but welcome the guys from Azerbaijan as well. And if we go onto our wish list, let's see. So new PPM tool, business analyst. Yeah, I've been there and done that, definitely. And some of the things, improved ELT buy-in. We've got quite a few different things around sponsors, which is really interesting. So again, there's a video from Future PMO which talks about the critical importance of the sponsor in your business, so in your project. So do go back and maybe show them that, and because it might give them a few little pointers. Maybe share it on your intranet site as an interesting thing to watch. It's only, like this webinar, it's not even 30 minutes long. More time, structured delivery, better quality data. So we've talked about data and the importance of that. And I think celebrated milestones. We're not great generally in PMO about talking about the really good stuff that we actually managed to achieve. So I think celebrated milestones, I think, is a really, really good one. So thank you so much for that. Prioritization has just got big. That tells me that more than one person's put that in there. So the bigger the word, the more times we've seen it, or the system has seen it. So prioritization being an interesting one. We actually did a networking event on prioritization. So I will dig that out, that companion article, so that you get some insights into, into some of the tactics and techniques that you can use in that, because it's part of our PMO pathway courses. So we've definitely got some content. So given that that's bigger, I'll get that sent over as a little bit of a Christmas present for some of you. In terms of the next year, have a look, read, connect, keep the conversation going internally within your organisation, but also with Wellingtone. Like I said, if you are part of our community, you have access to free lunch and learns, you have access to our Dr. PMO clinic. So if you do want to explore anything further with us, then do take a minute to join the community and get in touch. And I'm very happy to talk to you in a very friendly, no sales environment. So yes, definitely get in touch, and if I don't see you at one of our next events, which is happening next week, then I wish you all a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you all in 2026. Thank you so much.